Okay, I think they are live. Hello, everyone. This is Praveen here from Factors.ai. Excited to do this session today with Bill. We'll just give it a couple of minutes for people to join in and then get started. So yeah. Bill, what's the time there that you are?
Right now it's 12:30.
Okay. I think from what I could see, we have a bunch of people joining in from India as well. It's kind of late in India now, around 11 p.m. So I saw a bunch of people who got registered. So
Right, late night chats.
right, we'll just give it 30 seconds more and then we'll get started. All right. I think we can get started now. Hey everyone, excited to do this session on ABM for early stage startups with Bill today. Just by the way of introductions, my name is Praveen. I'm one of the founders of Factors.ai and I take care of product, marketing, and customer success for Factors. I'm excited to have Bill join us today for the session. Bill is the founder of Colony Spark and he has a very interesting, he's had a very interesting journey from political public affairs to demand gen and ABM. Bill, over to you for a quick intro and yeah, maybe just talk about your journey. I find it to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, pumped to be here talking about ABM for early stage. And my background's definitely a little unorthodox for B2B marketing. Got started in the political world, working on local, state, national races, advocacy, passing bills, electing candidates, and just really transitioned in the last decade to the B2B demand gen world, where you kind of have similar kind of processes. You have multiple stakeholders to help get someone elected. You have multiple stakeholders inside the account to help implement some new technology, add some new vendors. We've been successful so far and focusing more on that early stage, smaller business where you need to be that utility player. The team needs to think creatively, a little bit outside the box, with that scrappier mentality, and kind of keep that same winning. You need to win rather than like following some kind of rigid framework. So I'm excited to talk more about that today and translate that into the ABM.
Got it. Bill, out of curiosity, so how did this transition actually happen from your previous journey to like demand gen and ABM of all topics, right? Was it like, did you happen to like work on one campaign for like a company and then you just realized that, yeah, marketing seems like a very interesting space, relevant to your experience?
Yeah, a little bit. We worked, managed team for president, social media team for president. So really understanding like kind of like that the landscape across different channels, being able to kind of inspire audiences, understand who's taking action, being able to understand how we could take them from an online engagement to a donor to offline volunteers, and of course to go vote and win elections. And 2014, 2015, I was working on national races down in DC, and just was able to get some opportunities down working with a startup afterwards, and they really saw that kind of the potential for using like a little bit more of that political mentality. And a couple years down in Miami, just really kind of had some opportunities, similar kind of visions, and just snowballed from there. And really wasn't something intended to build this agency. It just kind of started happening, and I'm jumping along trying to build something a little bit more long term, longer than that. 18 months, 2 years, year and a half you have to win the election.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned that you largely work with smaller teams. Can you elaborate on that so that when we discuss some of these topics, the audience has context that largely the companies that you worked with is like of a certain specific stage.
Sure. So most teams we're working with don't have that marketing department. They're growing. They have revenue. Now they're ready to take that next step, and they just don't have. You don't really have the time to really bring on a few people on in a marketing team, training them, hiring, dealing with all the internal benefits and all of that. You really need to start growing. You want to continue that momentum. So we work together to develop those strategies, find ways to keep that, the scrappy mentality that we have to start growing. And whether it's ABM or a larger demand generation type of strategy. So it's really been, teams that, are ready to kind of accelerate that growth.
Got it. Bill, I just got some feedback that my audio is going in and out. Are you also struggling to hear me?
The audio is good now. So it's much better.
Okay. Just to let me know, Bill, in case I just swap the headphones over. All right. Sounds good then, Bill. So just to get started then. So when you're starting out working with one of these companies, as you said, very early stage, they've got some revenue coming in, they're growing, but there isn't like a marketing team yet, right? And you're starting your engagement with them on demand generation ABM. Where do you start? I presume one of the starting points is like, what is your target market that you want to go after, right? So how do you kind of have that discussion with these founders or these companies to determine that target account list? How important is it to do a good job of finalizing that list so that you're not spreading yourself too thin? And firstly, is that like the first exercise that you go through, or do you have like a methodology where you do another thing first before you get into target accounts and target market as such?
Sure. Of course, you want to understand the ICP for your business or the different groups that you're targeting, different buying committees and places that you're going to be able to sell into. But for ABM, especially early stage, let's try to understand who are your best customers, who are those, who's the cream of the crop. How can we prioritize? What are some triggers or some signals that we're seeing that kind of help you identify when this account may be ready? When you're working, you want to test this ABM. You want to jump in, dip your toe into the water, so to speak. You really want to start understanding, how can we kind of make an impact and show some signals that are going to help the whole team want to adapt this strategy. So understanding who your best customers in, understanding the signals. Maybe there's some kind of signal, intent on your website, or triggers like they're hiring new team members. There's a new CFO in place. What are those, those different pieces of the puzzle that we can start understanding so we can build a smaller target list to really pilot this program and able to create more of the personal experiences, offers, and getting the whole team kind of some buy-in from the team there.
Got it. So if I had to recap what you said, so one is identifying your best customers till date. So would you say that once you hit a limit of, let's say, 20 good fit customers, that's when you're able to find a pattern to say these are like our best customers?
I think it's a little bit different for everyone. Really with ABM, you can't just, not everyone's going to be ready for ABM. If you're selling $20 a month SaaS, you're probably not going to be doing like an ABM pilot for something like this. If you're selling a 5-figure SaaS deal, or you have professional services, it's really once you kind of get to that, I think a little bit of like that critical mass, or you can dig in and understand who your ICP is. It's really if it's 20, if it's 15, if it's 50, that's kind of it's a little bit different for each person. A lot of times, especially early stage, you're still trying to find that product market fit. You don't really know, are we going here? Are we going there? Is this the path for us? So it's really kind of understanding, do you have that product market fit, and then who are you selling to?
Got it. So you're saying obviously the more customers you have, the easier this exercise becomes. But Once you have product market fit, you start with an initial intuition of what is that customer segment that you're going after. After that, you mentioned how do you overlay on top of this customer segment understanding signals which help you prioritize these accounts. So you mentioned a few things like website intent signals. Are they hiring people in a specific department, I presume? And is there some new leadership that has joined in that department as some signal? So again, just to think about this operationally, do you have like a catalog of signals that you already look for to say, hey, these are some of the buying triggers, internal buying triggers when our software is most likely to be considered, right? And then kind of finalize on those.
So those are probably two of the bigger ones. Did you just hire someone? Hey, are you an ERP consultant? And did you notice that there's an account just hired a NetSuite administrator? Hey, that's we know that. Or is a new CFO coming on board that that would make sense to kind of speak with them. They may want to make some kind of bigger changes inside the organization, so we can be those kind of the resource for them. Those are two that how they raise capital, are they going to start growing? Those are probably like the top 2-3 that almost everyone with ABM is going to have like some kind of idea that makes sense for them.
Yeah, I agree. Like, for example, some of the buying signals that we use, very similar to what you said, which is there a new marketing leadership in the company, or is the marketing team kind of growing? Another signal that we use is the number of ads in your LinkedIn ads library, which is a crude proxy for the amount of investment that you're putting into LinkedIn, right? It's not always true that the more ads you have, the larger would be your spend. But it's a very good proxy for saying you're putting in so much investment into LinkedIn because you have so many creatives, right? We also look for signals like the number of landing pages on your website, again, a proxy for how many paid campaigns are you running across all the paid channels, right? So these have actually really worked out well for us. So I think figuring out these signals for each business, obviously the two ones that you mentioned of new leadership and hiring in a particular team makes sense, and maybe something contextual like what we do for Factors, which is finding a proxy for are you investing significantly into marketing.
Right. You may look at are they using HubSpot? Do they have the LinkedIn Pixel installed? And are they some other types of signal? You can really build a really tight group of targets there, especially with Factors. You can connect HubSpot with Factors. Integrate there. You want to make sure that you kind of give them that you can give them visualize that experience for them because of the tools that they're already using.
Got it. Now, at the early stage, and we've actually gone through this like a year and a half back, one of the challenges is that many founders are also very over optimistic about the fact that they can actually sell to the entire market, or that any sort of constraints would be limiting your growth, right? So is that something that you come across when you're working with these companies to say, hey, you got to start small with like a defined market? Don't try to. How easy is that conversation? Are you finding that it is easier to kind of do these days?
You say these days, and I agree. These days, especially recently, more and more B2B CEOs and C-suite that we're talking to now are kind of getting it. It's not just add my ebook to Google and I'm just going to start pulling out leads and do some like lead gen. They understand. They have a way more I guess patience for things to work now. Or at least see some positive signals. But when you're jumping into ABM, it's not just getting the C-suite involved, but it's getting that whole team involved. You want sales to be aligned with you every step of the way. And the way that we really want to, the way I see a lot of potential, like getting it, building this success inside of each company is dipping your toes in there, getting some pilot ready. So not just bringing all of sales along, not getting all the SDRs, AEs on board today, but maybe having the ABM pilot team that you can have that kind of ensures that you're all working together. You kind of are showing the positive signals, and then you can bring it to the bigger team and say, hey, here's what we're doing, kind of get a little bit more buy-in, because we all know ABM, you're not, if you're an SDR, you're not going to be getting those meetings every day. You're not going to be getting kind of like the typical incentives that you probably were in more of like that cold outreach or inbound lead gen type of system. So that's a big change for folks on the team, and not having that, just going overnight to switch from to an ABM model is probably setting up for failure.
No, I agree. I agree that trying to do a company-wide change, like getting a company-wide buy-in, the entire sales team, sales leadership, along with the marketing leadership for something which probably the company starting out with some amount of skepticism of we're not sure if this will work for us is a much harder exercise as compared to getting things started with a pilot program and then hopefully showing some results which hence get the buy-in from the team, right?
Right.
So that's a good segue for us to probably kind of go detail into how would you structure that pilot program, like what would be the level of investment required for a company to say let's test waters here, let's see what's going on. How many people from the sales team do you need? How many people from the marketing team do you need? What channels would you use? What kind of content do you need? Because ultimately you need to give content to your audience for them to start being aware about you, right? So could you talk about maybe some tactical experience of like a couple of customers where you said this is how we started the pilot program?
Sure. So when you're thinking about that team, that pilot team, like, let's think about you want someone from sales, maybe an SDR. You probably need a subject matter expert for some content, and then you need marketing. So if you have an agency or if you have an internal kind of small team there that can really start understanding that who's your target group, and where are they spending time online. So selecting a small something manageable, a target list, 20, 30 accounts where you can really dig into. Maybe these are, the cream of the crop ICP, or they may be doing, ICP that have some of those signals that we just talked about. And I would, work with them to set some goals, some realistic goals, understanding that, you're not going to, see success overnight here. So how can we start defining some positive signals through this pilot that can bring that momentum for the team, start seeing some wins on the board, and then making sure everyone's kind of has that stake inside the success. And that for us means regular calls, regular feedback loops, being able to share regular insights, and being able to kind of be able to visualize that account's journey. Factors has been real powerful for us. So you can show the actual accounts what their, some of their visits, some of their engagement on LinkedIn, and that, in my experience, kind of helps energize the team, helps them see, here's what's happening. Here's our creative that's working. Here's, the topics that are working. Here's what, these accounts care about. And on the flip side, like, here's what they don't care about. And on a regular basis, being able to swap in and out accounts that are that we want to go after, accounts that are just completely dead. And that, that transparency has really been crucial as you're getting that team buy-in.
Got it. So just digging a bit deeper into this, just for some operational details. So you said you need, let's say, one SDR, and then you would step in to play the role of that marketing team at an early stage. Would you say start with just one channel, let's say LinkedIn, because it's obviously a B2B network for hyper precise targeting. So do you almost always start with LinkedIn only as a channel?
Well, where I would say, and this gets different for everyone, is like really understand where your audience is and understand where you're already kind of spending time, where your efforts are already on, being spent. We wouldn't want to suggest jumping on a whole completely new channel your team's not already active on. But going back to the understanding where your audience is, speaking to your, those top customers, once you understand where they are, using a tool like SparkToro to really understand like where your audience attention is. Of course, LinkedIn as a B2B, you're typically you think your audience is there, and most times they are, but your audience is spending a lot of time on YouTube, a lot of time on Facebook, Reddit. So understanding what are their top networks, that their channels that they're spending time, and if it lines up that LinkedIn is one of the top, you know that's much easier. But I wouldn't recommend just saying LinkedIn because LinkedIn is your B2B company. Like let's take a step back, really learn our customer, and thinking about the different, a different play or different journey. If you want to have, you're being able to kind of build awareness, create a little bit of demand on LinkedIn. And what's that next step? You can actually understand like which accounts are engaged. What's the next channel that you want to talk to them? Is it using a tool? Being able to send them a gift. You can use something like Zest to really easily kind of send some accounts a thoughtful gift, or is it just using email or LinkedIn DMs to kind of communicate with accounts that are showing interest? Thinking kind of like a few steps journey, 2, 3, 4 steps inside this pilot to kind of understand like how you can bring them along. That's where we really see the potential. Because if you're just going one channel, not everyone's spending all day on one channel looking for a software to buy. So how can you really engage with them throughout their entire online offline experience?
No, I agree. I agree that LinkedIn can look like a default choice, but in some cases, your audience may not even be there. So using a solution like SparkToro to first understand where your audience is, it may happen to be LinkedIn, it may happen to be Facebook or YouTube for that matter. Now, once you identify that channel, then creating great content in that channel, which kind of helps you build some awareness amongst that audience. Hopefully driving them back to your website so that you can understand which companies are actually now showing interest on your website. Would you wait for a certain time once you start this program for the sales reach out either on email or in-mail to kind of get started to say, let's wait for a while before these accounts start showing some signs of interest, and then kind of pass it on to the sales team during the POC?
Absolutely. So where we, especially during these pilots, you want to really spend as with SDR, you really want to spend time to kind of personalize your outreach, your discussions, to learn, gain some intel, or actually know what's that next step for that account or that contact inside the account. So using, sticking with LinkedIn, being able to identify which accounts are highly engaged, that's really helpful. Kind of gives you a little bit of that hit list for the day. Who do you want to talk to today, rather than some blanket cold emails? Who's visiting the website? What page are they visiting? Are they visiting a blog post? That probably doesn't warrant a sales email. But if they're looking at the pricing page, do you think that's time for a little bit more of like a forward discussion? So really during this pilot, we want to spend time just not automating, but more manually understanding where's that next step, what's resonating, and how can we automate it down the line.
Got it. And one more aspect that I wanted to cover is in terms of the core content offer that you want to make initially when you're driving awareness, right? Again, what all have you tried? What has worked? Do you generate something from scratch while you're starting this program, or are you looking for what's like the best performing content that this company already has? Or do you have generally some principles to say you ideally want a piece of content which is maybe has a controversial opinion or has a bold opinion on some topic so that it is more educational for an audience? So how do you think about the core content itself?
Yeah, in that warm up phase, it's using a little bit of what you have, what's resonating. But the way we get a lot of buy-in is just bringing in that subject matter expert, bringing in that creative, so we can start brainstorming a little bit and getting them involved. Now, this isn't like a dictation from marketing or sales what's going to happen. Once everyone feels like they're having a little bit more of that stake to make the to gain success, that's where you get like that full account buy-in on our side. So using some of the controversial topics, using some some ideas from sales, being able to understand what are the conversations happening on your sales calls today. What's some trending questions that are sales is hearing on regular calls? How can we be a little bit more outward with those responses when we're distributing content to these accounts? If you have a tight group that who you're reaching out to, you can have really personalized type of content based on the challenges that they're facing today. If they're running, if they're using HubSpot and running X amount of ads, they may be having some trouble with different issues there. How can we create content around that? So thinking about that to kind of create a little bit of awareness of your brand, and then start thinking about how can we create demand for our solution. So talking about different challenges, different issues that they're facing, and positioning us as the thought leader or the solution.
Got it. Understood. And typically, how long would you? And again, I understand sales cycles for each company would be different, but keeping that nuance aside, when you're thinking of a pilot program, typically, how long would you recommend that pilot program to be? Because one thing that I do see in many companies is that they start off something and then, like in a month's time, they kind of call it off, right? While you're selling like a product which typically has like a sales cycle length of 6 months or more. And as well as what should you be really measuring at this POC stage for you to kind of have that confidence to say, hey, this seems to be working well?
So first, we anything less than a quarter, spending those 3 months, you're probably just going to wind up spinning your wheels, and you're going to have where we all have been before. Just this isn't working. Let's go back to our lead gen program. So I recommend at least 3 months. And it doesn't mean you need to close deals in 3 months, but you need to start seeing a little bit of like that engagement on your content. You need to start seeing some website visits. You maybe start having some initial conversations. If you're the SDR, maybe you're talking to some more of the junior level employees, gathering some intel, understanding maybe that they have a need. You're kind of seeing some positive signals that yes, people are showing some progress here. And on your team side, are you kind of not focusing too much on like activity-based metrics, but are we doing what we said we're going to do? Are we social selling in the account? Is our team making thoughtful comments that are spurring conversations, or are they just saying things like great post? Are we trying new creative every 3-4 weeks so we have new fresh eyes on these creatives? These are all things that are going to help us succeed. If you're just kind of giving the bare minimum, you're not likely to succeed. And then you're 3 months later, you're in a hole, and you're quickly pushed back to the strategies that you were doing in the past that don't work.
Got it. So you're saying at the minimum 3 months of focused effort, and then in terms of signals, figure out, if not like actual deals and pipelines, are you getting some early signals of accounts are actually progressing in terms of their level of engagement? Maybe there are an initial 1-2 inquiries or email responses to say, hey, this is interesting. And then some input metrics of saying, are you doing quality work in general, in terms of, are you refreshing your creatives? Are you doing social selling adequately, etc., is what you would kind of look for at this stage, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, let's say that we fast forward and the POC period is done, right? Obviously, there are two outcomes possible. Either the POC worked or the POC, let's say, didn't work, right? Now, let's take the scenario where, let's say the POC didn't work, and I'm presuming that would have happened in a couple of cases that you have worked with.
Never.
How do you tackle that now? Now, what's next? Is it go back to lead gen, or is it what's that conversation like?
It's always easy to fall back to the tried and true. And I say this a lot. I think a lot of CEOs are just kind of addicted to that notification in Slack that a new so-called lead comes through. And when you look back at it, what's your conversion rate? How many opportunities are coming on the board from these? And a lot of times it's less than 5%. It's a small percentage. So you're hiring more SDRs to spin their wheels, not really close anything, and it ends up being a lot of frustrating conversations at the end of the year. Why aren't we closing? Why aren't we getting opportunities? And when you fail on a strategy like this, it does happen, but we want to refocus back to is like, how can we best make the most impact with our budget? And a lot of times where you just takes that education, understanding, like you said, that what's the buyer journey, what's the sales cycle look like, and how can we add value across the sales cycle, whether it's through ABM or another approach. And when you're thinking about what's the personnel, what is like the resources needed to chase ebook downloads versus actually adding value to these accounts, or being able in the long term show how your solution is best positioned or lower cost or faster than your competitors. Over time, we always see a higher value, lower or faster payback on our customer acquisition costs. We see more quality leads. Everyone can agree that if a lead comes in and says they want a demo, or if they come in and say, "Oh, I want a proposal," that's way better than a lead that's a so-called lead that downloaded a white paper that you created on ChatGPT. So how can we really educate? And I think there's also just a little bit of the executive team that needs to be open to it. They need to have that mentality. Some of them don't. Some of them don't. You're just never going to win them over until they're probably desperate. And as a marketer, where do you want to spend your time? Working with people that kind of get it and kind of want to experiment and do something bigger, or do you just want to run Google ads because you're making money right now, just from a retainer?
Yeah. I mean, I have seen this across so many clients, right? I think it's I mean, for good or for bad, I think the last 20 years, Google Ads has conditioned you to kind of believe that there is so much demand out there. You just have to spend on the right keywords and you can just tap into it, right? But again, when I look at customers who work with us as well, like the biggest issue with ads, Google Ads at least, is that yes, the keyword seems right, but these are other companies that we want to sell to, right? Or there are a lot of almost always those companies have like a set frame of reference of what they are kind of looking for. And it's almost at the last leg that you're getting into the consideration set, right? And I think new research kind of has proven that at at the stage of buying process, most buyers default to the brand that they already knew about or had heard about from someone else, rather than discovering a new brand via search ads. Like the whole idea of sniping an established brand with like a search ad, I think increasingly it's kind of being established that is very, very hard to do, right? And it is almost always like an unprofitable sort of venture because you're paying so much in terms of your marketing costs, and you have to really kind of compete on price, right? So I see that at least some executive teams are warming up and realizing that by resorting to this last leg of saying somebody else will create the demand, we'll just capture that demand by sniping on that brand, is generally a lower ACV sort of sale. You are like an afterthought in that purchase process. So unless you're really discounting the price, you're gonna find it hard to win over. And in the longer term, it's generally unprofitable given the cost that you already have to pay to Google as well, right? So I see that turnaround happening. I guess the only I thought it was gaining momentum, just that the whole the downturn in the market has really kind of again pulled back people to say, oh no, for now let's just do a little bit more of search advertising and then come back to this once the market is better. I hope we don't kind of go back to extreme over dependence on just direct response as a channel, but yeah, that's something that I've seen. Now Assuming that now the pilot is successful, so let's say that the pilot is now successful and you want to kind of scale up this program. Again, operationally, how do you kind of do that? Is this the time when you start talking to the sales team, start bringing in multiple channels? Like what does it take to transition from a pilot to like a full-fledged ABM program?
Yeah, bringing in a little bit more of the team, and then understanding how can we make an impact on multiple channels. What's that whole buyer journey look like? Are they spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, Reddit, etc.? Are we adding events to this mix? Kind of thinking through like a little bit deeper. For now, for the pilot, it's not all about just closing deals, but as now we're going to be making um, sizable investment. You're going to want to start seeing some return on this, over year. So thinking a little bit longer term, what's that, quarter over quarter look like? And then how do we kind of accelerate kind of some of the efforts? So if you're going to have more team, more, personnel on the team, you're probably going to get a little bit more output. And how can we, kind of start growing inside those channels a little bit more? If you need, tactically or planning out LinkedIn. If you were doing LinkedIn, maybe you're just doing some social selling inside the accounts with different stakeholders, and now we want to add different initiatives such as thought leadership, or LinkedIn ads, something like that. So how can we kind of really kind of fill out that program, that channel? So I would think of it as that, like how can we put some programs into the plan, add some initiatives inside of there, and not spread ourselves too thin across too many channels, as opposed to like actually being like really killing it on just a few, with the new personnel and budget.
Got it. Understood. Understood. Got it. Now, at this point, since we spoke about like multiple channels, right? Curious to hear from you. Like, is there a channel that you didn't think would work for any company, and then you were surprised positively by the fact that it worked very well? Right? What's one counterintuitive example that you have, which I think would be very interesting for the audience to hear as well, of a channel that really worked well for you when you didn't expect it to?
Yeah, just it's always real interesting now to kind of do some of that audience research, especially with a smaller team. Like most B2B, like we were saying, that everyone thinks my audience is on LinkedIn, but I know there's a lot of data out now, or LinkedIn or Google search. But when you actually get into it, your audience is spending time in productivity apps, on other social media, Instagram, on Reddit, or listening to podcasts. So when we start getting that fuller picture, thinking a little bit, that beat it, realize that just because I'm selling to another business, like that, those are actual individuals inside the business. They're not just looking on LinkedIn to learn about ABM all day. They're looking at videos, they're looking at pictures of their family, or they're reading the news and listening to podcasts, just like we all are. So a lot of the kind of eye-opening starts there. And then as we can think about how can we make an impact on some of these channels. So a couple, Reddit is always one that's, I think a lot more B2B or companies now are seeing potential here, really digging into the subreddits that are topical to what they are, they can add value, and being able to comment and add some real value to the discussions that are happening there, and using your profile on Reddit as kind of like your landing page rather than just promoting your service or your offer. Podcast has really been really effective for us. Not only just there's opportunities to run pre-roll, mid-roll ads, or do some real ideas. Working with the creators and hosts to kind of think about how we can do something a little bit different. And that has been not only just effective, but it's fun as a marketer, where you can do a little bit more than just run like a programmatic ad. You can talk with someone, and moving that into more like that guess like that B2B influencer creator space now that we're seeing a lot more things happening there as the creators are just becoming, they're really like stepping up their game with video, and being able to kind of integrate your product or service into those conversations has really been kind of that, showing that positive signals. And I see in the next couple of years that's probably going to be a huge growth channel forever.
Yeah, I think the creator space in the last couple of years, or creators, influencers, however you call it, right? That space has really exploded, right? Across Substacks, paid communities, and newsletters, podcasts, as you said, Slack communities by various, not necessarily sort of vendor-driven communities, but communities for professionals, right? Yeah, I think that space has really exploded. We ourselves kind of, do you have like is have you figured out the best way to kind of stay on top of this? Like, who are these influencers who are best fit for like a particular vendor? Or is it always you start from scratch to kind of figure out who are the best influencers? Is there any solution which actually gives you like a map of saying these are all the influencers out there right now?
Well, where I would think, if we're starting working with a different industry, you really just learning from doing those customer interviews is going to give you a lot of
Hmm.
intel. Where are you spending your time? I'm on this Slack channel, or I get all my marketing, tips from X, and like, that kind of like leads you down your own little rabbit hole. And you just kind of start from there. I'm sure there's tools that can kind of help you pick out, who's influential in your space. But when you're thinking about now, like why not be a little bit more manual? I think of a lot of, especially when we're building out our plan, it doesn't hurt to really in the like that first phase do a little bit more manual work, actually get into the weeds and understand like, why is this working? Who are we talking to? Are these people the ones we want to choose? And as you kind of grow that each program, it gets a little bit more operational and scalable. So it doesn't hurt to really take your time and use AI or use research and tools like maybe Clay. Clay might be a great way to kind of identify people inside different spaces that get a high engagement, have a lot of comments on their posts. But don't be afraid to take a couple hours a day and just learn and comment and do the work basically.
Got it. Understood. So you're saying listen to customer interviews, explicitly ask where do you spend time, where do you learn about the problem space that the solution kind of solves for. That should give you a lot of ideas in terms of what are their sources of education, and if any of those are channels that you can partner with from a sponsoring or a paid promotion perspective, that would be like great to do. You mentioned Reddit as well. I've seen a complete upside in the number of advertisers who are trying out Reddit. I mean, almost similar to the number of advertisers who have stopped trying out Twitter. I'd say, there's a significant upsurge in interest in Reddit over the last at least 12 months that I have seen. Um, you mentioned gifting initially, right? So,
Mhm.
any tips there, like of saying, how do you actually go about figuring out what's like a good gift? How do you stand out? Because a lot of people send swag like your coffee mugs and t-shirts and so on, right? Like, but what is like a thoughtful gift that helps you stand out?
Yeah. So like, everyone likes swag. What are you probably wear it to the gym or when you're just lounging around the house, or I think it's cool. But when I'm thinking about gifts, like I'm thinking about how do I maybe want to spend a little bit more time to understand that you probably want something to sit on someone's desk or to get some use out of it. And one story I read I read this. I never did it, but I thought it was a great anecdote. It was, they were selling into like a financial firm, and they understood that a lot of the junior managers there that are coming in are, they're the people that really want to make a name for themselves. They see themselves driving those Ferraris and Corvettes one day. So they part of the plan was they gifted a lot of the juniors like a little model Corvette. So like it sat on their desk, kind of like something that they can aspire to. And then when you're speaking to those people, those are like your champions inside the organization. They want to come in and say like, hey, I'm coming in with some ideas to help us save money or move faster or make, grow our revenue. So think about like who you're actually targeting and like what's their incentive to like want to use your service or go to the CEO or the CFO and kind of pitch you, as opposed to just like, hey, I want to send someone some steaks. So if someone sends me some steaks, that's great. Definitely would love to eat them, and I'm sure you'll have a conversation. But I don't think it's not always just like checking the box gift. It's thinking a little bit deeper on like what's the motivation and like how can we get a smile out of someone or get someone to say like these guys get me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think thoughtful gifting I believe it can genuinely be impactful, because like if somebody feels that, oh, there was some thought put into this, obviously you'll remember the brand which did that, right? As compared to one more coffee mug or
Yeah.
one more whatever swag T-shirt, battery pack, whatever it is, right? Which just comes your way and it hardly kind of registers, even if you see the logo, even if you read it for a minute, right?
Yep.
So I think, yeah, probably something that, yeah, sorry, you were saying.
I was just jumping on that. Like, when you're with ABM, your ACV should be pretty high. So it's worth spending a little extra more than just like your T-shirt or like a tumbler, because if you get a couple opportunities on the board, you're gonna grow, and it's easy to kind of throw in that regular. Oh, we have hats today, so let's throw some hats in the box. But if you spend a little extra time and effort, I think I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit of the budgeting, but how can you kind of, if you want to get 10 new logos, and you need 5 opportunities, it kind of comes down to like, hey, it is worth spending a little extra and being a little thoughtful, and goes a long way. And then you can, have some really great case studies and anecdotes to share, and I can use them on some LinkedIn Lives.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think I agree. I think probably we need more stories like the example that you gave of an aspirational sort of automobile model, which kind of speaks to that junior employee at that company, and really kind of resonates with them, right? I think a few more examples of this nature would be helpful. Moving on to what you said, which is around budgeting, and then obviously budgeting relates to some notion of ROI measurement. So you mentioned earlier that now post pilot plan, we are looking at a more significant investment over the longer term. How do you go about the budgeting, and how do you actually then drive that or relate that budget to the outcomes, right? So how do you actually set that up for the company that you're working with right now?
So I think that the general way to think about it is, what's your average contract value, your ACV, and what's your goal for the year, or what's your goals, and be able to kind of have that, visualize that, and then start working backwards. So if we need to get 10 new customers at 10 20,000, we need to have X amount of opportunities, and for each opportunity we need to spend this amount, $2,000, $5,000. And that gives you, like, in a general sense, that gives you that budget, kind of say like, I'm willing to spend X 5,000 to make 20,000, or whatever it works out to be inside of your organization. And that really kind of sets you up for success when you're talking to the executive team, because with ABM and a lot of these, it takes a little bit longer to drive these opportunities, and you can kind of track a little bit of the budget, what's being spent, and be able to sync them up with opportunities. You can show over time that this is actually more effective, more efficient way to spend, rather than just kind of getting those 500 leads this month for X amount of dollars, and at the end of the year only one closed. This gives you like a real data, the data kind of say like, this is how we're building our strategy, how we're executing, and be able to track toward that number.
Got it. what you said, let's say that the goal is 10 deals of 20,000, let's say each. So that's $200,000 worth of revenue or pipeline that you want, revenue that you want. Work backwards to say how many opportunities do you need? How much are you willing to spend per opportunity? Keeping the overall math in mind. That helps you kind of decide on the budget, right? Now, when it comes to measuring ROI, would you stick to a similar framework of saying this was our target account list where we said we'd spend all this money, and any sort of opportunity that comes from this or any revenue that's booked from this is to be considered as return from this program? Or do you run into the challenge of saying, oh no, that opportunity came from something else that we did? Like this program had nothing to do with that one opportunity, even if it may have been an account that you targeted as part of this program.
Sure. First, accounts are maybe like throughout the quarter, throughout the year, accounts may be coming in and out based on those signals that we talked about. And like you can start getting a better idea of over time how that shakes out. Attribution is, definitely a hot topic that I'm sure everyone here is just kind of thinking about when they're justifying their plan or the different channels or tactics. And where I kind of I guess I favor more of like let's understand the qualitative, quantitative attribution and the factors that go into it, but let's not judge success or failure on every attribution data point here. So just to give an example, if you're running ads on a certain channel to these accounts, the likely that the click through rate is not going to be high. But they're going to be seeing the ads. They may come later through like a direct channel or through a organic search for your brand. If you're, typically in the past, so with the attribution the way it was, you would just kind of say, oh, everyone's coming through organic. Our Facebook or our Reddit ads or our LinkedIn ads aren't working. Today, thankfully, and Factor is a great example of just being able to kind of see that, maybe that your account that you're targeting isn't clicking or isn't going to the website from your ad, but they are engaging with it. They are getting those impressions. It does give you a little bit of like a sense over time, like, hey, these are working in like a quantitative sense. But there's also, the tried and true, like, where'd you hear about us? And talking to your customers, asking them in a forum. You may be doing podcasts or things like this, LinkedIn Live, that don't have a one-to-one attribution to your plan. But when you speak to a new customer, that I was watching I'm always watching this podcast. They mention you or you're a guest, or someone shared a podcast in my Slack group, and I listened to it there. So really being able to kind of understand that journey through, listening to your customers, and at the end of the day, you want to know which programs are working, which are actually driving revenue. But you, as a marketer, as a someone on the team, you need to trust your plan. You need to stop thinking about like judging success on like an individual podcast or blog post, and start judging success on like the entirety of your strategy. And are you executing what you said you were going to do? Because with these longer sales cycles, you can't really just expect like like you said, like 3 posts are going to lead to 1 client. It's being active on LinkedIn with ads, with thought leadership, thoughtfully commenting inside the different accounts you're targeting. None of these are one-to-one are going to say like this is leading to 20,000 in revenue, but you can know with some certainty that I know that I was commenting on X guy's account or posts. I know he was seeing our ads, and I know he became a customer 6 months down the line. And there was definitely some influence there.
Yeah, I got what I agree completely with what you said. Both the points around one is rely more on qualitative feedback for each tactic to say, is this tactic working? Has someone told you that? And generally, when something is working, I've noticed that people actually tell you when they meet them that, hey, this is they volunteer that information, saying, hey, this is how I got to know about you. It is not so much. I don't see that the recall problem that people refer to is like a very significant one. Like if that if that interaction was really memorable, they people mostly remember is what I've noticed at least. Again, maybe not at scale, but a lot of people at least have told us when we have tried out something off the beat on marketing, that, and if they've been exposed to that, they've kind of told us that, hey, that was something that I noticed, right? So rely more on qualitative feedback. And I think the second point that you mentioned is try to look at the effectiveness of the overall program rather than an
Yeah.
individual tactic within the program. That makes it easier overall to kind of measure the effectiveness here. I know we have like only 5 minutes, so I just wanted to let the audience know, if you drop in any questions over here, Bill and I can take that. I don't see any questions as of now, but if you have any questions, please do feel free to drop them. Bill, I'll just continue now that we've crossed the measurement question as well. Uh, what is the minimum viable tech stack that is needed for you to kind of get started with like an ABM program?
When that's a I feel like that's a loaded question. So, we got to think, when you're doing pilot, that's, try to use what you have at your disposal. There's, nothing more frustrating than trying to add new tools just because you think it's the way to go, and then trying to figure out how to use that tool based on like, what you think it's supposed to be doing, while you're supposed to be executing a plan. When you're, the minimum viable tech stack could be, just tools like Clay, LinkedIn, or Apollo, or a tool maybe like Trigify, or things like that just kind of like get the job done. And then being able to kind of understand that journey that's happening and using factors, or the tools that you kind of understand, like the accounts journey on offsite and onsite. Those that may be like that. That's all you may just need. As you grow, as you're getting more buy-in. There's other ways you can build your tech stack, but start small. And if you trust your plan and you're able to kind of where your customer is spending time, and that you can get a sense of like, is this adding value? That's really the best place to start, and then you can find those essential applications later, and you'll have a little bit more of a kind of the buy-in from the team to invest in that.
Got it. So broadly, your advice is keep it light rather than trying to go and buy like new software and then learn how to use that software, etc. Start the program with mostly what you have. Start showing some results with the program so that you can reinvest some of the revenue that you've made to then kind of building up to like an eventual sort of tech stack, right? Makes sense. I completely agree as well that it's more important to get started with your program rather than, let's say, get caught up in how would you actually execute it, right? And what software do you need? Last question, and probably we'll end with that. I still don't see any questions, so that's that. You mentioned sales marketing alignment before. Could you give me like an example of a situation where it didn't work out at all, and what went wrong in terms of driving that alignment? And maybe contrast that with a situation where you saw that it worked out beautifully, right?
Yeah,
and what was different there?
the real, I'll start. I would say most of these alignment fails because you're not aligned on the goals, and you're not aligned on like what it's taking to get there. The easiest way to start, the easiest and probably the biggest problem most people today are seeing is, there's probably a misalignment in incentives. The SDR is being rewarded for getting a meeting, so they want to get meetings, and that's you can't hate on them for doing their job and getting what they're being incentivized towards. They're not being incentivized to be thought leaders on LinkedIn, or thoughtfully comment on the target on your target accounts. So how can you kind of realign the incentives for the entire team, so you're growing together? There's also the lack of transparency. Are you seeing that what accounts are engaging? Are you seeing what's working, understanding kind of what positive signals are happening? Or are you just kind of just sending a report over to sales like once a month? Are you having that open weekly conversations where you're deciding which accounts are coming in and out? What are some ideas to better engage the accounts that are showing some positive signals, and how can the entire team contribute? So you could celebrate the wins and kind of reflect on the losses together. When that stuff doesn't happen, it's almost, most likely you're going to fail there. You're just not, you're not, you're not, it's just a easy way to kind of waste time, and also frustrate sales where they feel like there's not, their time's not being well spent because they could be doing more cold emails or just dialing, a few more numbers to get a call. So, I think that's the a general sense. And where on the flip side, where you get that alignment, where you kind of have that small team, that little bought in team that is ready to do what we were saying with the pilot. Those are kind of how you can snowball inside your company, and aligning those incentives. So are we incentivizing them for the social selling? Are they starting conversations? Are they, over time, the SDR role is probably going to turn into more of like an industry expert or a tool, software expert? Are they kind of studying up? Are they being able to be a little bit more educated on the systems that they're selling? And how can we make sure, that the time that they're spending not getting meetings is actually something that's going to drive revenue? And if we know that's going to drive revenue, how can we reward them with some kind of incentive, some financial incentive, so that they want to continue doing that? And if you have that, and if you have an executive team that's willing to spend the time and get this right, you're going to see a positive return, as compared to your typical lead gen type of spaghetti on the wall type of efforts.
Got it. You mentioned a few things there, so just to kind of recap what you said. So one thing that you said is alignment between the teams on both the outcome and the process, to say, hey, this is what we are trying to do. This is why we are using these channels and these tactics. This is the assumption and the hypothesis that we are working with. We may not be right, but at least let's agree that this is the hypothesis that we want to test out. Let's say that maybe a gifting campaign should work. So that's what we're going to try. We're not being random about it. This is a hypothesis, this is a process, and this is the outcome that we want to achieve. You then mentioned about closer collaboration, sharing wins, sharing losses, sharing learnings, meeting more frequently, so that it doesn't seem like each one is doing what they individually are doing, and then at the end of the day, it becomes like a you versus me kind of a conversation. And in the last part that you mentioned, a certain bit about how are you upskilling the entire team through this process, right? So how are you kind of helping the team, including the SDRs, become more industry experts as well? And how can you kind of help them do that? So ballpark, did I cover all the things that you mentioned?
What was that again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you covered. Just like the last piece I'll just end with is thinking long term and how working to have a little bit less thought about the initial, immediate sales, and thinking about building relationships, because an account today that's on market today can be a customer in 9 months. A CFO can leave and take a new position and have the power to implement some new technology that you've already kind of seeded in their mind. And it's actually ways to create like referral partnerships as the accounts are targeting go to, the individuals go to other accounts. So having that long-term mentality and being able to kind of visualize or show this to inside your team, just is going to help you win.
Got it. I think that's a great place to end this conversation, Bill. Just in case some of the people who watch the video later, they'd want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do so?
Shoot me come on LinkedIn, Bill Murphy. Of course, Bill at colonyspark.com, and visit our website, colonyspark.com. Looking forward to talking with anyone about any ABM, and just reach out in any way possible.
Got it. Thanks everyone who watching with this live, you know, real time, as well as those who watch this later as well. I hope this conversation was useful. I took away a lot from Bill in terms of setting up a pilot program, scaling it, and then measuring success of it, and aligning a sales and marketing team to kind of execute on this. I hope you found it as insightful as well. Thanks again for your time. Thanks a lot, Bill, for agreeing to do this session with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. All right. So I'll end the stream now. Just give me 1 second.